What are you doing down there?
Just looking for my mask.
Train to the plastic underground. Approaching station. Please stand away from the platform head. Alright, so this is the template that I got from Bill Duran over at Punished Props. They put this out a while ago, and it was a pretty cool little fun build that he did, and I always thought maybe one day I would put this together, but it just so happens to be the 30th anniversary of the mask this week. I believe it was Monday. So I said, hey, I should probably make the mask. It's one of those iconic movie props, and I think it'll look cool hanging up on the wall. So just using Bill's templates here. I cut all these out of some EVA floor mat foam. It's always like my go-to foam because it's super cheap and I can buy it locally in bulk, so I always have a lot of it on hand. And so yeah, just using some contact cement to glue these foam pieces together. The contact cement gets glued on both sides. You let it dry and then you stick it together for a pretty permanent bond. So yeah, I work on one side first. I get that side done. Now I'm working on the eye piece here. This is like the eye fill section, just to give it a little bit of shape. I get the other side glued together and stick that eyepiece in there as well. Then after both halves are done, I go ahead and I glue those both together, starting at the top. I flip it over, keep it flat against the table as I glue that piece together so that it is perfectly glued together. Sometimes this floor mat foam is a little thicker in places because it's manufactured pretty quickly, and it's weird. You can cut the foam, and in some spots of the sheet it'll be a little thicker or a little thinner. So if you glue it from the back like this, you're ensuring that that front seam is perfectly matched, and then even if that back seam is high, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's just something that I have noticed over many builds, and that's why more expensive foam is better. But yeah, this stuff works for this kind of stuff. I mean, this is just a quick, simple little thing here. So that is it for the mask, the basic shape, and that recessed piece that goes on top. Now I can heat seal this back and front, and also give it some heat so that I can bend it and shape it and have it keep its curved shape. So now I'm looking at an actual reference image, and I'm just using a Sharpie, and I'm just trying to mark out where this needs to be carved. there's a couple little grooves and shapes to this mask. Right now it looks a little bit too much like Groot, so I'm gonna carve into this mask, and the more I do, actually, the more it ends up looking like Groot. But you just gotta trust the process and just keep going. But that's all I thought about this whole time, was like yeah, this legitimately looks like Groot. But yeah, just using a sanding drum on my Dremel, and I'm just going through and just like actually carving, sanding away spots, and trying to shape the mask. That's one of the good reasons about using a thick floor mat foam, is that you can carve into it. You can really sand down the material, and yeah, kind of reshape it. Yeah, and then after it is all shaped up and looking good, then I also look at a reference, and I go through and I start drawing in the wood grain. Some of these are referenced, some of these I really tried to make look the same, and then the more I did it, the more I just kind of came up with my own grain lines. And I think it looked pretty good in the end. So using that same sanding drum, holding it at an angle, I'm going through and I'm following all of these Sharpie lines. These are going to be the thick, like deep grooves in the mask. So I'm just using this bigger drum to get like a bigger groove. Yeah, so then for that top piece here, it also needs to get a little bit of shaping. So I sand the sides down to have it come to a little bit of a hourglass shape. And the top is not completely flat, so I sand down the top bevel, kind of like a nose piece. So then I'm using this little diamond cutting wheel, and I'm going through, and now I'm carving in all of the really fine wood grain with that. So just kind of going in between the wider grains, just to kind of add a little bit of texture overall to this. I also make sure that I keep that grain going on the sides of the mask, the top and bottom, and the sides there, to make it look like it was an actual piece of wood that was carved and had some wood texture on it. So yeah, that is it for the texturing part. During the sanding process and stuff, the eyes kind of opened up a little bit, and I wasn't really happy with the way it looked. So I'm just using a little bit of some foam clay here. And I'm going to go ahead and basically patch the eyes with this foam clay. So from the back, I'm just going to kind of push a chunk of foam into the eye. And then in the front, just kind of push that into place just to fill that V slit. And I do that on every corner of the eye, just so you don't have that open V shape. And this really worked. After I painted it, you can't even see it, so it was just one of those things that bothered me, so I made sure to patch it. So gluing the nose guard piece on here. So for the Loki symbol on that nose guard shape, using that same diamond cutting wheel, and I'm just holding it at this angle and just carving in a circle, just putting a recess circle in there. I drew up this little template here. I'm just cutting out this L, and then I'm gonna trace and cut that out of some 1mm EVA foam. That's what that green stuff is. That is 1mm EVA foam. So I cut that L out of that. I also cut out a few thin strips of that for the kind of like the lattice that goes behind the L. It reminds me of Doctor Strange's window. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, that's kind of what this symbol reminds me of. It's also kind of like an Irish, like knot. So I put contact cement on everything, and now I'm trying my best to eyeball this. I kind of just end up putting these strips in place, and then when I add another one, I kind of like wrap it under and over, looking at a reference of this, and then I trim it in place when it gets to the other end. Yeah, it wasn't super complicated. It was just a couple times I thought I would have it, and I had to kind of lift it up and run it under. So it's contact cemented, so I'm not pushing like super hard on it. I don't want it to be a permanent glue yet. I want to try to have it stick in place, but I can also lift it and run these underneath each other before it's permanently glued. So yeah, I glued the L on top of that after I guess my camera stopped recording, but same thing. I just stuck that L on top. This is some FX primer. I've used this stuff before. It works pretty good. I'm convinced that it is just Mod Podge in a smaller container, but branded specifically for like cosplay stuff. I could be wrong, but it works the same, it smells the same, the consistency is the same. So, but yeah, I use it for like small projects like this because it works pretty good. So I just brush that on everything, and just put one coat on this. It's supposed to be wood, so I wasn't worried about having like a perfectly sealed, smooth foam finish. So going through here with some brown, and I paint everything brown. So while that is still kind of wet, it's not dry yet, but going through with some green and just kind of wet brushing some green on top. And yeah, it's funny, like in my head this mask is like wood, but it has like a little bit of green on top, but it's actually mostly just green. Like all of it is mostly just green. So I'm looking at pictures at the same time and trying to follow that to the best that I can. This is some lighter, like lime green, going through and just kind of doing this on some specific stripes, and then dry brushing it a little bit on some of the higher spots. The nose guard I paint copper because in my head this is made out of brass and it is aged, but again, according to the reference images, it's mostly just green. So I paint it copper to give it a good base, and then I go through and I weather it with some turquoise to make it look like it's aged copper. Yeah, so I'm just giving it a turquoise wash. This is just some turquoise paint, really watered down. And I'm just kind of putting it on the whole surface. And then I kind of dabbed it away. Kind of liked it, kind of didn't like it at this point. Everything's dry now. This is the next day. Going through with some lighter brown and adding some brown stripes just to get a little bit of a variation in this mask. And then kind of doing just a dry brush of this brown on top just to kind of dull out all this green, so it's not like super bright green. I also mix up a darker turquoise color. I end up putting more brown in this too. This turquoise color, I added more brown to it to really darken it up. And I was a lot more happy with that than having it be in this bright turquoise color. But yeah, then I'm going through with some dark brown. I think it's the same brown I used to base this mask, and just adding a few stripes of that. You can see I still have some of that copper on my brush, so I wasn't like super worried about making sure everything was like clean before I added more paint. I just kind of kept adding paint. I thought that would help add like different variations of color and mixing stuff together and that kind of stuff. And it ended up working out pretty good. So you can see I added some brown, really darkened up this turquoise, and kind of made it look a lot more dirty and aged. And yeah, I was pretty happy with that. So yeah, that is it. That is all the painting I did, and that is how I made and painted the Loki mask. Alright, so there you guys go. That is how I made the Loki mask from the mask. It's crazy to believe that this is a 30-year-old movie, and I grew up watching this movie all the time. So again, thanks to Punish Props for putting out this template. It was a really fun, quick, easy build. Super fun. I definitely think if you're a fan of the mask, you should make your own and put it up on the wall. And yeah, so we'll see you guys next time when we make something cool.